Our guest is Laurie Levine. She's released a number of internationally acclaimed albums, Unspoken, Living Room, Six Winters and Border Crossing, as well as a project with Josie Field called Side by Side. She's guested on a range of albums, most recently Arno Carstens' Lightning Prevails and the brand new Black Hotels. And then on her albums she has guests as diverse as the Radio Kalahari Orkest founder Dan Roberts, people like WHP's sideman Chepo Montereng, Language 12's Justin Badenhorst, and celebrity Ed Jordan. She has also authored a book on traditional instruments of Southern Africa as an ethnomusicologist, and performs widely in a range of different shows, from big stage events to much smaller intimate gigs. Laurie, welcome.
Thank you very much.
So I'd love to start by a question that I'm sure many of your listeners and fans would want to know the answer to, is where does this obsession, this love with Americana and country music come from?
I started off listening to folk music, and then I had a groundbreaking trip to New York City in 2010, I think it was, and I watched Emmylou Harris. And before then, I didn't really listen to country music. It was more on the folk rock side of things. And I watched her in this teeny little bookshop, and she sang a song about her dog that had just passed away. And then she had me in tears the whole show. And so I really watched her up close for that show, and then I went to watch her in the City Hall. And that was it really.
So that transition from folk into more Appalachian style, those, because of course the country music is folk music, but you had started out in much more of a folk idiom. Was it just literally being in America and hearing it that got you cued into it?
Yeah, it's almost like I hadn't latched onto it yet for some reason, and then Emmylou Harris just opened up the seed for me, and that's where it grew. You know?
So now some of your songs are definitely in that idiom, and in fact you cover some of the Americana classics, but you still manage to use that to express, well, to my ear, what sounds like whatever the concerns of Laurie Levine, the songwriter, are at that point. How do you manage to mesh those two?
Well, I think within whatever idiom you're working in, you've got to find your own expression and your own voice, and hopefully I'm doing that, or have done that at times, over the last few years. And I think my concerns very much also fit well into, they're expressed through the genre as well, because it's very much a storytelling idiom. It's about the words and it's quite an emotive genre as well. So yeah, I suppose somewhere.
Where does that storytelling come from? Do you have particular messages that you're trying to get across, or is it just something that sparks an inspirational interest?
It's always this unknown, mysterious thing. When I sit down and write a song, I don't really know what's going to come. So it's a very intuitive thing that's sparked by something deeply subconscious that's gone on or is going on in my brain or in my dreams or memory or whatever it is. And it's not, I suppose, where contemporary music today, I don't think as many people are as political in their writing as they used to be, and I certainly am not. My writing's very much a personal, even if it's not my story, it's coming from a very personal place of emotional experience of the world.
Now, inevitably, if a female musician and artist is being interviewed, they get asked a question about being a female musician and artist, which seems a little unfair because no one asks the men that.
Exactly.
But you don't bring the political into what you do. But I think some of your songs have got the personal as political in them. They certainly have. They're about real social things. Is that an intentional, or is it just, again, wherever the inspiration came from?
Yeah, none of it's intentional. It's kind of, I just go with where the song takes me, and I like to think that there's some kind of social awareness that I'm of this world and in this world, So I'm glad that comes across in some way.
You managed to play and get booked for quite a wide range of shows. So from the huge festival stages through to smaller, almost kind of lounge gigs. And how different are those for you?
So vastly different. Definitely my comfortable space is a smaller stage because I've done more of that. There's something in the intimacy and closeness of an audience. I played a gig a week ago where there were maybe 25 people, and it was in someone's converted garage. And there's something really magic about that proximity. Big stages, yeah, it's a whole different thing. It's for me, it's about putting on more of a show, a performance. There's a bit of trickery, and it's more of an act. So I've done it, and I've had some great shows, but it's certainly a whole different skill.
What's the trickery?
Well, I suppose if it's a rock band, the trickery is kind of the sparks on stage and the thrashing of guitars. I don't know.
But you don't have sparks on stage, and you don't thrash the guitar.
No.
So what are the tricks you use for that huge crowd?
Well, I'm still figuring that out, I suppose. I mean, and this is where, I started by talking about Emmylou Harris, and I suppose the power of that is not actually having to lean on that. It's just purely the presentation of the songs and the music and the amazing musicianship on stage. So within the genre I'm working in, it's less of the trickery, but and the gimmicks. But there's still, within that, there are there are things that you do that make it work that you wouldn't necessarily need to do on a smaller stage.
Does that make it harder for you, the fact that when you're doing those big stage things, there aren't explosions and fireworks and leather outfits or masks or a huge band all behind you? Does it make it harder for just you to get that across? Do you have to work more?
Yeah, I find bigger stages harder work. It's usually people are spread out, so there's not that immediate eye contact. And without kind of a big band behind you and dancers on stage and that kind of thing, you do kind of feel a bit dwarfed on stage. So that the challenge is to kind of make the songs really speak out loud to the audience.
And you've been presenting songs to the world since 2007. Over that time, you've played a lot of these different shows. Mm-hmm. Does that mean that when you're writing now, you have a bit of consciousness of where the song might have to go to be presented?
I try not to think about that when I'm writing, because that can then interfere with kind of the integrity of what you're trying to get across or the expression of it. So I don't think about that much, but when I'm putting an album together, that's where I do start thinking, how's this going to be in a performance? And that's when you can really start also changing the songs and molding them so that they also work for performance. But in the initial writing stage, it's not something that I think about.
So you've got a song which has been written, and now you're moving it into the production studio to turn it into something that one day probably is going to be on an album. Mm-hmm. Take us through how that process works, because I think it's very mysterious to most fans of music.
It's a long process, I suppose, depending on how strict you are with your songs. But the last 3 albums that I've recorded, there's been an extensive pre-production phase. And what that is about is demoing the songs in their very raw form, and then working out how you can make them stronger. Is one of them missing a bridge? Is the chorus strong enough or big enough? Do you need to rewrite some of the lyrics? All those kind of writing issues. And then there comes the arrangement issues. What instruments you're going to use? What is your approach to the sound? Because you can take any good song and it can go in any direction, essentially. So there's all these question marks at the beginning when you go into the studio. And the writing of the songs is just it's kind of phase 1, and then there are kind of quite a few things that have to happen to get it ready for being recorded.
On 6 Winters, what was the hardest song to coax into the form that it needed to be on the album?
There were probably 2 that were really tricky. Like, you find sometimes the songs that you expect to be really easy just battle to find their place, and others kind of come together. there was a track called Beautiful Loser on Six Winters. And for me, it was a vocal struggle, actually. It was trying to get my voice to sit in the right place in the song. So less a production issue. But then on the production side, there was another track called I Won't Ask Him Why. And I kind of had a vision for how it should sound, but I didn't know how to quite get it to that place. There were a couple. I mean, we really kind of labored through them and tried to find the right place for each of them.
Now, is the difficulty there ever an emotional one? Because you've written a piece that you're now trying to turn into what other people's ears will grapple with and receive, hopefully.
I'm very emotional about it. I'm very attached, and it's very hard to separate that, to kind of not feel like your life's at stake if you don't get the song right. I'm learning to let go of that a bit. Yeah.
A bit?
Slowly.
So what's keeping you back there? Because obviously you do need to retain control because you want this artistic perfection, but why are you only letting go some parts?
Well, I think you want to find the sound that you hear in your head. Otherwise, it's incredibly frustrating. So you have to have that kind of preciousness. And why I'm not letting go of it because it's hard to let go.
So on Border Crossing, I think it was in the song Front Seat, you had a lyric that was along the lines of, there are these wrong turns that show you the right way. Mm-hmm. Have you had wrong turns in your career that have led you into the right path of the career?
It's kind of hard to see them like that sometimes. If I were to really think about it, I imagine that there are. And I'm quite fatalistic about wrong turns, so I suppose...
Fatalistic negative or fatalistic it will turn out okay?
No, like in a positive kind of way.
Right.
Like, in the past I've maybe chosen a direction that I haven't quite, felt was right. And I couldn't listen to it for whatever the reason was at the time. And at the end of the day, you learn from that and you go, okay, that's not right, so this makes it right. This is what's right. You learn from what's wrong. Hold on. You learn what's right from what's wrong.
Okay,
Exactly.
Okay, got you. Now, are there any albums that make any songs on any albums or any parts from the juvenilia of 7 years ago that make you cringe, or are you still quite proud of that body of work?
No, there's quite a bit that makes me cringe. I feel like the first album was kind of my pre-New York experience with Emmylou Harris. So that whole sound is not a sound I connect with now. And somehow, I think I recorded that in about 2005 or 6, and my voice changed somewhere along the way. So, and the songs were, within the first catalogue of songs I'd written. So they definitely, some of them are a little embarrassing to me.
Do you have fans who still love those and say, hey, we want you to play the song, and you're kind of going, oh, don't know if I can?
I have fans who love the album, and they want to hear it. I suppose they are.
Taking it through into Living Room then, you had already started this falling in love with the country sound, maybe more there to do with the way the stories were told than actually the way the music was recorded and presented. But did that feel like quite a conscious thing happening, or was it just one of the influences you were building up on?
Sorry, was it a conscious thing, the kind of whole country?
Yes, exactly. Specifically on Living Room, because that's quite a transitional album.
No, I don't think it was conscious yet. I think it was starting to creep into the music without me knowing it. But also Living Room was recorded in quite a different way to the first album I did. And it was an entirely different set of musicians. And it had quite a jazzy feel. And the songs really worked with that feel. That feel worked with the songs. So it wasn't quite there yet. It certainly wasn't conscious.
So still staying with the albums and the progression through them, on Border Crossing, the Great American Songbook lands in South Africa, as epitomized by you, and the audience loves it. People really lapped it up, which partly is because our South African ears are used to that sort of music, or is it actually just because those kinds of storytelling are quite universal?
I don't know how used to it South Africans are, although when I arrived at the Bruce Springsteen concert and saw how many like hardcore fans he had, I kind of thought otherwise. I think this album's quite accessible. I think the songs, I hate using the word commercial, but there's more of an ease on the ear perhaps. And yeah, so I'm not sure actually. It's hard to tell, you know, why people respond the way they do. And there was something also in the band. There was a magic that happened with the way it was recorded, the instrumentation, and hopefully people like the songs.
Is that what you were talking about earlier when you were talking about arrangements, when you're putting the music together? Because you've got all these instruments, but how do you make them work as a whole?
Exactly. I mean, it's really a process of, well, if we're going to have a horn section, it's going to give the album a very particular sound. And the same with, we brought in backing vocalists, which I've never done before. And that takes it to a whole new area, you know, a whole new space, but into the soul space. So it very much dictates where the album's going to go.
Bringing in that much bigger ensemble of musicians, things like backing singers, things like bringing in a horn section, that must be a lot of moving parts to juggle with songs that started out with just you and a guitar. How do you do it?
Well, it takes a real adjustment of your ears because you're used to hearing the song in a certain way. And you've got to, the tricky thing is making space for everything. And sometimes there's a really fine line between overfilling the space and, you know, having enough space. So it's a matter of what we generally do is put down all the different instruments we hear being on the track. And then Dan Roberts, who produced the album and mixed it, goes through each part and finds where each part belongs. And if it's not needed, then rather have the space there.
Have you ever had to let go of any of your bits, your guitar or your voice?
Oh, yes.
Okay. And what's that like going, I know it's my song, but I can't sing on that beat?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, at first you kind of feel a bit affronted by it, but it's fine. I mean, it's all for the sake of the song sounding good. So if someone can play the guitar better than you, play your part better than you, then absolutely use that. It's not a live show where you have to prove that you're the player or, you know.
But you're going to have to take that same song and present it live later on. Is there a nerve-wracking part with that?
Yeah, sometimes you kind of, on 6 Winters, we started experimenting with some electronic-y sounds, which are very subtle and they just textures really. But my concern was, you know, it's not going to sound the same live because I don't want to work with backing tracks and a DJ or whatever it is. But then I've come to realize that the two are different mediums. The recorded album and the live performance are completely different things. And you want to, in your live performance, you want to capture the essence of the song. And unless it's a totally acoustic recording, it's not going to, you know, you'd have to have a horn section and a whole bunch of musicians on stage with you. And people, I don't think people have an issue with that.
So you mentioned the songs and how you turn them into something live, and one of the things that you found is that touring with your sister-in-arms, so to speak, Josie Field, has worked very, very well, and we're all lucky as fans because we've got side by side a recorded album of that. How did you two hook up and decide that it was an obvious thing to put the 2 voices and the 2 guitars, and sometimes the little guitars, together as well?
Ukuleles. It was actually quite a random thing. We were both being booked by someone at the time, the same guy, and he said, why don't you do a double bill? It was going to be a double bill. And then it was all for economical reasons that I said to Josie, well, why don't we accompany each other? Because to bring with 2 other musicians on the road is going to be expensive. So we said, great, you know, I play banjo, she plays ukulele, and we just got together for rehearsal, and it just kind of clicked. You know, we hadn't thought how it was going to sound. And so we decided that instead of doing her set and my set, we would do a joint set, playing on each other's songs, some covers as well. And after one tour, we thought it was only a one tour thing. People really responded, so we kept at it and decided to do a recording of it, just to capture the live show, because people would come to the merch, you know, desk at the end of the night and say, well, you know, it's great, I'd like to get Laurie and Josie, but I want the show. Mm-hmm. So that's how it happened.
You're very lucky, or perhaps there's a greater force at work there, but you're very lucky with the way your voices, the two registers, fit together. Mm. And it seems to me almost like you were perfectly intended to sing together and perform together. When you're arranging your own songs, though, yes, how do the two of you decide who takes what part?
It's really a matter of experimenting. So on one of my songs that's off the latest album called She Trusts You, there's a mandolin on the recording and a ukulele, I think, and Josie plays ukulele. So it seemed kind of natural that would be the right sound for the song. So we take it song by song, and just I'll try a bit of banjo on something or a bit of guitar, and we'll see what works the best, you know.
What's also really nice for me about that particular project is there are many collaborative projects, but there's something, and I think it's probably a bit to do with who the two of you are as people, but it's also got to do with two female energies that are coming together to make this thing. It's very beautiful. It's also it seems very gently traded, the way that it works. So do you feel it that way?
Yeah, very much. There's no ego involved. It's very much, you know, we've become good friends. We're very similar, we're very compatible to tour on the road. And it's such an easy collaboration. It's, it's really just fostered a great friendship.
So we'll talk about some of the other covers you've done in a moment, like tackling the hallowed ground of June Carter Cash and Johnny Cash. But the two of you did a Kings of Leon tune. Yes. Which is a great transposition. Is there a tale behind that?
Well, that would be Josie's influence and Josie's choice. I generally haven't in the past listened to much rock. And I wasn't that familiar with the Kings of Leon's music. And Josie's a huge fan, so she came one day with the song. And as soon as she played it, I said, yes, we must do it. So yeah, I mean, despite the fact that she's got more of the rock blues influences, a bit pop at times, and I'm at times country folk, it doesn't matter what covers we're tackling. It's like we Josie and Laurie-fy them, you know. So the Kings of Leon has Josie on ukulele, I'm on ukulele actually, and she's on guitar, and then the two female harmonies. So it's quite lovely to take a male rock song and feminize it and make it into something pretty.
Because Kings of Leon are a pretty testosterone band.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not quite crotch grabbing stuff, but it's certainly a male energy there.
Yeah.
I've been roaming around, always looking down at all I see. Painted faces filled with places I can't reach. You know that I could use somebody. You know that I could use somebody. You know that I could use somebody.
So when you're working together with Josie, there's obviously a different energy when it's just two women who are performing and collaborating on various things. How do the two of you take those different roles, and who does what in the partnership, the collaboration?
It's interesting because we both definitely retain the boss role. There's no male-female, dynamic. We both really used to running our own careers, and we've spent so much time kind of getting our careers to a certain stage and working so hard that we both accept that, you know, it's an equal partnership. So it's a lovely dynamic, and at times it's really funny because we both like to boss each other a little bit, and you know, it will be like, okay, we do at sound check at 6 o'clock, and Josie will say, well, can't we get there 5:45? So we'll come to a happy medium, 5:50. So it's a negotiation. It's a continual negotiation, but it's a very comfortable one.
So that raises something which I think we might as well tackle head on. It is harder, I imagine, being a woman in a male-dominated music industry, which is a tough enough industry as it is. How have you experienced that?
I think it was harder a few years ago with the technological explosion. I think more females have started coming out of the woodworks, female acts. But I still think, you know, if you go to any festival in the country, there are not nearly as many female acts as male acts. And I'm not sure if that's because they're not as good, or they're underrepresented, or they're not as many of them. So we're definitely a minority of sorts, but I think certainly in what we're doing, kind of more the folk thing, more and more female musicians are starting to tour and get out there.
So you also mentioned something about the career that you've managed, and there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes, quite obviously. And one of the things you seem to have been quite good at, although it's also not up to you for part of it to happen, is you seem to have been pretty good at getting glowing international reviews of your albums. So the review is obviously up to a reviewer in The Guardian or in Uncut, but prestigious titles. What is the process like, and how much have you had to do to get your material to them?
Yes, it's about having a good publicist. Yeah, so I haven't had much control. When we released 6 Winters in the UK, I had no idea, you know, if the reviews were going to be favorable or not. And you just kind of give your work over, and I had a very fantastic publicist who I was working with. I think it's essential to find the right team. And yeah, the reviews were great.
Who else is necessary behind the scenes? You've mentioned a publicist, but what else?
Well, in an ideal situation, you have a full-time manager who's just focusing on your career. Unfortunately, that is not the case in my career. I manage myself. It's just, there are not many managers in South Africa. It's not a very big industry for some reason. Same with booking agents. I've had booking agents through the years, and they play a vital role getting you to the right stages, you know. At the moment, I'm doing my own bookings. Thinking what else? A good sound engineer would be great. You know, a permanent one who really understands the nuances of all your songs, you know, so someone tweaking each song. But that's a luxury once again. And a crew would be fantastic. Roadie to carry the heavy gear. When Josie and I tour, we carrying big heavy speakers, and we driving, then we performing, and then we rolling up cables. So it's I think a team takes you to the next level, and hopefully that will happen at some point.
Here's hoping indeed. There's something else that seems quite unique about the way that you manage your career is in a lot of the smaller places that you tour, or sometimes even in the bigger cities, there'll be suddenly someone who we see from your social media has joined you on stage. Here it's a cellist, there it's a banjo player, yes. Somewhere else it's an additional singer or musician.
Yes.
Do they just want to play with you? Is there kind of a brotherhood and sisterhood of the road out there of musicians?
Well, it's something I'm discovering more and more, and particularly in this tour, because it's the first time I've done a solo tour. And I think people, if they see that you're already with other musicians, they're less kind of confident to come and offer to come and play with you and jam. But when you solo, it opens up all sorts of opportunities and friendships. And so, yeah, I think there's definitely, I mean, there are a huge amount of musicians all over the country, and they're either kind of just hanging around at venues and watching music themselves, or friends, and it's really makes such a big difference.
One of the other frequent elements that comes through in your social media is a larger-than-life personality called Tupelo. So I guess my first question is, Tupelo the dog, are you a Nick Cave fan or a Van Morrison fan, or just a fan of that particular part of the world? Where did it come from?
Yeah, I suppose she's a rock and roll dog, you know. It's like her name refers to all these musical things, and I certainly am a Van Morrison fan. And she's just a cool little music dog.
So flipping things around, there's something that most of your album fans and listening fans won't be aware of, but you authored a book, which was a kind of ethnomusicology book tracking the origins and the uses of a whole lot of Southern African indigenous instruments. Mm-hmm. Does that have anything to do with the music you play, or is it a kind of previous life?
It's a previous life. It was a project that I didn't even mean to get involved with, and it didn't start out as a book that was going to be published. So I kind of fell into it somehow, and it's very separate from what I do now. Although having said that, knowing the richness of the heritage of traditional instruments we have in the country, it would be really nice at some point to bring that into the music.
Because you're not carrying enough already with banjos, ukuleles, guitars.
Listen, on my next tour I want to take a keyboard too, so it's only getting more and more.
So
challenging.
Is there any of that knowledge of South African and Southern African indigenous music that informs parts of your when you're creating a song?
No, I don't think so. I think it's like two separate disciplines. The book was really a research project and an academic project. And the music is, it's my love for Americana and country and folk. So the two don't really meet at the moment in my music.
So heading into the last two questions, there are two songs I'd love to tackle, and the one is you putting quite a lot on the line by doing a version of Ring of Fire, which we know lots of male artists have done, taking the Johnny Cash role, but it's a June Carter Cash song as well. Mm-hmm. And what was it like for you tackling, this anthemic canon of a piece?
It was an accident, really. It wasn't intentional, not to excuse it in any way, but I was going through a big breakup at the time, and I just started playing the song, and it just resonated so much with me at the time, and I slowed it right down, because I think a lot of the covers are these very cheerful, bouncy country beats, rhythms. Mine became a ballad, and it was a bit, I was a bit uncertain whether I should put it on the album, but once we had recorded it and found this lovely cello beat that happens from the beginning of the song, and we felt like we had found something quite different for it, and it just felt nice in the album, so we went with it.
That does come through in a lot of your music and your albums. You kind of doing the music that feels nice, that you really just want to be putting out there.
Yes.
Is that easy to do?
If you've got enough songs that you like and that you're fond enough. I take quite a long time between albums, getting to a point where I have enough songs that I really like, and I don't want to put something out if I don't like it myself.
Having said that, you might like the songs, but I'm particularly thinking of Oh Brother. Mm-hmm. It doesn't sound like what you were singing about or something that you liked going through. It's a pretty dark song, and many of yours are. Mm. So how do you like the dark material?
Well, in the case of Oh Brother, it wasn't a personal story, so I kind of had this biblical feel to it and theme to it as well. And the darkness is really sometimes very appealing, and it really feels good when you putting it out there, but you putting it in a form and giving it a form and hopefully transcending the darkness and transforming it into something beautiful, So yeah, I don't shy away from the darkness. I think the darkness really informs a lot of my stuff, and hopefully, people get lightness out of it.
It's a nice way of looking at it. Final question then is, where to from here? What's next for Laurie Levine? Where are you going?
Well, I kind of don't have a long-term plan, but at the moment I'm just touring a lot. Josie Field and I are going to be hooking up again in November and December doing a tour. And I have about 3 collaborative albums that I want to do. So that's the challenge, is finding the time. I'd like to write some material with Josie, so do a completely new album with her. Tebogo Serumedi, who plays bass with me, we've got a wonderful collaboration, and we really want to do something together as well. I'm going to bring out my own album. I want to maybe spend a few months in New York City recording my new album. So just kind of seeing where it all takes me.
We'll keep a keen eye out for all of those.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Lovely to chat. This is a song called Gone for a While, and it's off my latest album, Border Crossing. I'm gonna step out of this house. It's made of brick and stone. It keeps me warm by night and cool by day, but it's no longer a place I can call home. I'm gonna give myself to the wind, let it carry me where it may blow. I may end up with nothing, no, better that than to settle, never know. So I'll be gone for a while. If you come looking for me, I won't be found right now. Don't wait, I'll be gone for a while. Gone for a while. I dreamt these walls were crumbling down. I tried to save everything I could, but they went down before my eyes. Nothing left where we once stood. These days I look around, there's little here that feels like it's my own. And everything I once held dear belongs to another world, another lifetime ago. So I'll be gone for a while. You come looking for me, I won't be found right now. Don't wait, I'll be gone for a while. Gone for a while. To get back, I have to get low. To get lost, I have to let go. To let go, I have to lose the only love I've ever known.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Nailed
you very
it.
much.
Turning words into notes and then notes again into words. Amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.